All weirdos featured on the show are downright disgusting, but these are the men that Chris hated on the show, and what this weirdo brought along will leave you in shock.
You here?
Okay, first up, here comes a 20-year-old student who is studying at the Salt Lake City Community College in Utah. Considering he featured on the show, you can take it for granted that this loser screwed his life up forever. Sebastian Rodriguez should have ideally been at college working on his assignments, but sadly, he had another project in mind. When Sebastian started chatting up with the girl, he wanted to make sure he came across as a very approachable person. He not only lied about his age, but also went under the alias Chris, just to strike a better balance with the girl on the other side. It was only after the girl said that she was looking for someone older did Sebastian reveal his real age. When the loser arrived at the house, Sebastian welcomed himself in with great confidence. He started to look for the girl who could only be heard at the time. When he started to walk towards the direction of the voice, Wait a minute! Who the hell is that lurking from behind? Was he part of the crew? Or perhaps a cameraman looking for a better shot? Neither. This dude had actually tagged along with Sebastian. Yes, this was Sebastian's partner in crime, David Mackick. And before either of them could scoot off, Chris decided to step in.
Hey, come right over here, please. Right over there.
What we had here were two birds in a bush, and mind you, this was going to turn out to be a really thorny, prickly bush. Right from the get-go, Chris wasted no time to get down to business. While Sebastian looked like his soul had been flushed out of his body, David was barely fazed by the situation. He was so much at ease that anyone could easily pass him off as one of the members of the crew. When Chris got down to questioning, he first confirmed Sebastian's credentials, and then he moved on to David, asked him his side of the story.
And who are you?
Oh, I'm just the tag along.
Yeah, he's just my friend.
Just the tag along.
And what's your name?
David.
Yep, washed his hands off right there, just like that. He actually sounded more like, "Don't get anywhere near my boss. I'm just the tag-along. I don't even know what I'm doing here." Well, like as if. Honestly, Chris isn't dumb to believe that. David did tag along, but he was obviously aware of what he was tagging along for. By this time, you can see both the weirdos display different ways of exhibiting anxiety and restlessness. Sebastian was biting the hell off his nails, and David, he had a rather peculiar way to handle stress by constantly sipping on his drink. At this point, Chris was intrigued. I mean, he's seen some really vile men, but this was just pissing him off. In order to get him to stop, Chris tried to bring the focus on David and asked him this.
What are you drinking there?
No beer. No Rockstar.
So it's just an energy drink then?
Yeah.
It looks like Mr. Tagalong is just going to stick to his drink for a little longer. Meanwhile, Sebastian started to beat around the bush. He first denied knowing the age of the girl, but when he found Chris holding up the transcripts in his hand, the weirdo gave up trying. As for David, he tried to shun down all the questions fired at him with just one reply. "I'm just a tag-along." Well, sure you are, but you did come, didn't you? However, David was in for a big shock as well. When Chris revealed the age of the girl Sebastian was here to meet, David's expression is thoroughly worth watching.
Oh, she said.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no way anyone can fake a reaction like that. David was stunned. He was probably thinking, what the heck am I doing here? Yes, David knew exactly what he was here for. He was here to pitch in and have some fun for himself too, but he didn't know with whom. As for Sebastian, he had no idea how to react while his arse was being fired. Should I sit? Should I stand? Should I run away? Or should I just die? Sebastian's mind was bombarded with several things that could happen with him. And finally, he mustered up the courage to ask Chris this.
Am I in trouble, sir?
And the silence? That's one hell of a class act right there, Chris. For someone who's going through a panic attack, Chris only made it worse for Sebastian by giving him the silent treatment. You have to agree that it's quite tormenting to just think about the different possibilities of what might happen as opposed to straight up being informed of the consequences. And that's exactly what was eating Sebastian up from the inside. While Chris continued to grill him and brought up the issue of the drinks and of course the pack of protection he'd brought along for what was to be a fun night, David in the background was enjoying the show. Considering how much David was bothered about Sebastian getting caught in the act, I wonder what kind of relationship these guys shared, because this dude simply didn't care. And I'm guessing Chris too had the same question, to which Sebastian said this.
How come you brought your tag along?
Because I just brought him because I wasn't going to do anything, sir. I just wanted him to come with me.
Well, they definitely are not friends, that much I know. Did they just meet or something? One of the viewers commented saying Sebastian probably couldn't get the hard drinks by himself, and so asked David to help him out since he was older. Either way, since David was here, he was bound to be answerable in the eyes of the law, but that's not what happens.
And if not, you're obviously free to go.
Great, thanks a lot, sir. I'm just a tag along.
When Chris asked them to leave, the relief that washed over Sebastian's face was palpable. It was like a new lease of breath was filled into his life all over again. But that relief would only last till he reached the exit, as there was someone waiting to get a good hold of him. As for the tag, he was happy that the ordeal was finally over. And so was his drink. Well, you can poke all the fun you want at this guy, but this is what pissed Chris to the core. He was mad that Sebastian got someone he hardly knew along with him to meet a girl who was really young. He not only got someone, but also got enough drinks and protection for both of them. But this is what makes the sting even crazier. David might be the only guy on the show who showed up at the sting and left without getting involved in any sort of investigation. Thereafter, Sebastian was moved to the nearest police headquarters where he was booked and sentenced to 36 months in prison. And David, he moved on in life, got married, and had a bunch of kids. Do you think letting David go was a mistake? Just think of it this way. What if Chris wasn't there at the house that day? What do you think these two guys would have been up to? Would David have still continued to be a tag, or would he have joined Sebastian in going all the way? I guess we'll never know. But here comes another weirdo. And this one right here was so disgusting that Chris simply lost it when he read the transcripts.
Father-son.
Father-son?
Yes.
So this is the grandpa you don't want in your life, because this old man right here is actually the next weirdo on our list for today. Charles Harding, or simply Chuck, was all of 65 years old, but for some reason, he did not act his age. Chuck's chat with the boy he was in contact with online from the team might go down as one of the most disgusting chats to have ever been exchanged in the history of the show. When Chuck got in touch with the boy somewhere down the line, he got so engrossed in his dirty thoughts that he could not help himself but get all the demographics of the boy's body. The worst of the chat is still to come, but let me quickly show you a glimpse of what happened when Chuck made it to the Sting house.
Hey, how are you?
Okay.
Why don't you have a seat right around that stool there for me?
Aw, it looks like the poor old grandpa's age finally got to him. I mean, just take a look at his reaction. Chuck was startled. He was expecting a puny little boy, but here comes a tall 6-foot gentleman all suited up from head to toe. So how do you get out of a sticky situation like this? Just lie the hell out of it till you get out. And that's exactly what Chuck decided to do. Would it work in his favor?
Talk to him, possibly.
I know, this weirdo couldn't even talk properly. He was barely able to even voice his thoughts. And yet, here he was trying to pull off an entirely different performance for the day. You'd think he had it in him to pull it off. Anyway, if you couldn't make out a thing of what he said, let me help you out. So apparently, there was this gentleman who called Chuck over because Chuck was selling a house. Wow, I have to give it to him. This was quite the storyteller. And mind you, his story is full of twists and turns. This man sure had a way with his words. But will it help him out of this mess he's in? When Chris started to read from the chats, good old Chuck could not believe what was happening. But did he know it? Nope. The man sat so still that it was hard to read his face. And when he finally opened his mouth, out came another hideous lie.
Well, I have another person that uses my computer.
Another person.
Yep, why not? I mean, anyone could use your computer. Totally get it. But why is it that you are the one who showed up at the Sting house? When Chris continued to read the transcript, you can see how poetic Chuck really was. When the boy asked him if he was rich, this is how he replied.
No, son. Rich only in love I have, and the care for you.
Wow, precious words. But what kind of care, really? The man wanted to do everything right, from sizing up stuff to feeling it and caressing it till it ran dry. But what this weirdo reveals next made Chris lose his head.
Military travel agency for 5 years, and then I was a government employee with the Navy.
Yep, this man had worked not only for the Air Force, but also for the church in the past. And after all that, this is what he was doing? When nothing else worked, he finally admitted that he was the one who had chatted up with the boy. And well, the boy was in a gay chat room. So what was wrong with a little harmless chat? Again, just like he did earlier, he conveniently forgot about the boy's age. Well, I didn't really expect anything better from him anyway. But it's scary how many people this man would have come across in his whole life, and the kind of of things he would have done with them. I bet this wasn't his first rodeo. All we have to do is just scan his browsing history, and I'm not going to be surprised if I find a ton of other illicit chats in there. But Chris had a more pressing question to ask.
Do you know that it's illegal to send obscene material?
You can see how Chris was minutes away from punching this loser's face. What this weirdo was here to do could have left an innocent person scarred for life. But apparently, this Gramps would have bailed out if the boy met the following criteria.
If, I felt uncomfortable and I felt that he was, not...
Just forget about everything, okay? The very fact that the boy was simply not old enough should have been enough reason for Chuck to say his goodbyes. Chris definitely gave him a good earful. And in one of his podcasts, he even mentioned that just having Chuck around literally disgusted him. This man is clearly rotting in hell right now. But this next weirdo was bowled over the moment he stepped inside the house. Wondering why? The reason behind his reaction is shocking.
Come here and have a seat. No.
I knew that.
You know what?
I know.
Sit down, please.
Okay.
Keith Williams was beaming with confidence when he walked up the driveway and invited himself inside the Sting house. But everything changed the moment he saw Chris. Of course, finding another grown man in the house as opposed to the person they had been talking to is upsetting. But Keith's reasons were different.
Can I give an interview?
You're not going to give an interview.
Keith actually refused to give an interview, which means he clearly knew Chris was here for one. Well, that's only because this wasn't Keith's first time. It was just another house, another setup, but the same old weirdo caught in the same old trap. You know how the crew lines up one weirdo after another at the same Sting house, right? Well, that's sadly how many there are out in the streets. So Keith showed up a little too early, and he actually drove past another loser getting arrested right in front of the house. He actually saw the entire climax of the Sting happening live in front of his eyes. But despite that, Keith wanted to take his chances. When he called the girl for a quick update on what was happening, he was told that it was some random thing that the cops had latched onto. So he waited for the cops to leave, and then circled right back into getting himself arrested. Talk about being desperate. But this is the reason Keith went through all the trouble.
Bored. Honestly, look at my eyes. I just,
What on earth? Bored? How can you even be this bored in life? Really? Have you got nothing else to do? Heard of anything called friends? Hobbies? Just chilling out maybe? No. Imagine if every bored person on the face of the earth shows up at random places like this. What do you make of a world like that? The sooner we pack such idiots away, the better. Because having them around is just no good. But this weirdo tried his best to talk himself out of the mess he was in.
Anyway, I'll get rid of it and I'll never touch a thing again. I'll go to meetings, whatever you need me to do.
Talk about being guilty. But what he did was to make Chris's job easier. Keith had just spilled the beans even before Chris got a chance to grill him. But when Chris held his ground and continued to read the horrendous transcripts, the weirdo had the craziest reaction I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm wrong. Do you understand? I'm telling you I'm wrong.
This man is definitely getting on my nerves right now. And nope, not one small hint of guilt on his face. And when Chris brought up his past encounter in a similar episode from the crew's online history, this clown had only one thing to say.
Get me inside your mind. What's going on?
Just bored. I'm single. I'm bored.
To hell with your boredom, man. What kind of boredom is this? I mean, get a life, bro. Okay, one last try. Now the cameras are out, and Chris has also revealed his identity. But let's see if our man here will finally own his shit or not.
Drove by this house and saw police out front.
Yeah.
Yet you walked in here anyway.
Bored. Like I told you.
To hell with your boredom? Okay, let's just get rid of this bored soul and move on to this next weirdo who brought something so unexpected with him that for the first time ever, the crew had no idea what to do.
Oh no, he brought his son with him. He's got his child with him.
Yep, that's right. Clifford Wallock literally brought his kid along with him. This is not a play date for kids, buddy. Get that loud and clear inside your filthy head. How can a father even think of bringing his own child to commit such an offense? Apparently, he brought him along only because there was no one else to take care of him. Well, he could easily set another date with his online partner, or maybe even drop the kid off at a relative's. Or how about just giving up the whole idea, huh? No, that sounds more like it. I can't get over the trauma the kid must be experiencing right now. I will never be able to come to terms with this particular episode. And it's not just me. Everyone involved on that particular particular day was in for a shock they ever asked for. Just take a look at how ever so casually he's walking right inside the Sting house with this kid. What was the kid supposed to be doing while this man was at his game, huh? The crew had no idea what to expect from a man who would stoop as low as this maniac, and it goes without saying that Chris didn't want to waste any time either. There is no way this could play out like any other regular bust on the show. The crew had to be very careful with this one. They wanted to make sure that the man knew he was in trouble, but at the same time, not alarm the child in any way.
My point is, because your child is here, I think it'd be best if you just went ahead and left.
Chris got straight to business, and this is one sting he will never be proud of. The TV presenter was very brief with the confrontation and let him go almost immediately. Now, this was going to be a very different kind of arrest. Sadly, the kid, no matter how much they tried, had to witness the arrest of his father. And all Clifford could think about at the time was this.
Get arrested.
Please give me my son, please.
If you were so bothered about your child, you would never do something as disgusting as what brought you to the Sting house. You were not bothered about your kid, so stop putting up a show. In a podcast, Chris later shared this rather unusual experience and said that he despised Clifford for bringing the boy along. I'm sure the boy was old enough to understand what was happening, but one thing is for sure. Since this arrest was meant to go public, I hope the boy wasn't affected with the extent of humiliation on TV. And this one right here was so calm that none of them could predict his next move. What he did when the cameras came out left everyone stunned. Nathan down for. Well, considering Chris put him down in just 4 minutes, I guess he couldn't have had a better name. Now, Nathan was in a hurry, like as if it was the last day of the world or something. Right off the bat, as soon as he entered the house, Nathan wanted to get down to business. And guess who we saw lurking behind the shadows?
Do me a favor and just go have a seat right in the center block, please.
Well, hello! Welcome to the worst nightmare of your life, you prick. But look at this one, you guys. Just take a good look at him. This dude wasn't in the least bit affected by Chris's presence in the house. I mean, whatever is this loser made of? This joker did not deserve to live a life of freedom, and you're soon about to find out why.
What are you doing here?
Came to visit somebody.
Who did you come to visit?
Okay, this piece of junk is way too cool for someone who had just been caught. Looking at the composure with which he handled Chris and his questions, one of the viewers had some serious doubts about him. He went to the extent of even calling this prick a sociopath. Big words, huh? Well, hell yeah! I'm kind of getting the same vibe as well. I mean, take a look at those eyes. Although he hadn't spoken much, and whenever he did, the tone of his voice was so calm and comforting. All it takes is one look into those eyes, and you'll know how disturbing this guy can really be. Nathan knew that his life was soon going to take a turn for the worst, but he never let it show. And this is exactly what pissed the hell out of Chris. Did his brain actually take that long to process what was happening? Well, I think this weirdo was being too careful. He was very calculating and weighed every word before it came out from his mouth. Speaking about his emotionless face, another viewer wanted people against playing poker with him, because this one surely carried a poker face, didn't he? But that is only until Chris started to get into the real grind.
I mean, there seems little doubt as to what you wanted to do here, based upon the chat.
What is the stare down happening between both of these men? Who do you think will win this? Do you think Nathan managed to intimidate Chris? Well, of course that was his intention, but who do you think he was playing the fool with? There's no way Chris would back down from what he was here to do, but that doesn't mean he wasn't met with a challenge. It's annoying how this loser has the same constant expression right from the time the confrontation began. No fear, no remorse, no guilt, nothing at all. It was hard to read his next move, which is why the rest of the crew and the cops were getting geared up to face the unexpected. Who knows? What if things go sideways? You can never tell what happens next, especially when you're in the midst of someone as weird as Nathan. But when Chris tried to probe further, this jerk gave the most absurd reaction yet.
Get into very graphic detail about what you want to do to her.
Chris was beginning to lose his composure. You can actually sense a little bit of anger oozing out of him at this point. The TV presenter was trying to step on the wrong nerve just to see if he can get any sort of reaction from the weirdo. And what is the best way to do this? The chat logs, of course. But contrary to what I thought would happen, this bozo did not flinch. All he managed to say was that people do all sorts of things on the internet, and it means nothing to him. It's all just an act, a fantasy, and nothing else. Really? Is this guy for real? But Chris persisted in trying to break him down, and things started to get more intense.
What are we to make? Now you have my heart pumping and my blood racing.
The audacity he has just to sit there and act so calm while being caught in the act of doing something so heinous and vile. It just amazes me what some people are made of. And it's not like this bozo didn't know the repercussions that he would have for contacting a girl like this. In fact, he knew it very well, which is why he asked the girl to not talk about their interaction with anybody else. But look who's in trouble now.
If you have anything else that you'd like to tell me, I'd be happy to hear it. If not, you're obviously free to walk out that door.
Now, Chris is a man of massive mental control. Dealing with jerks like this isn't an easy job, and Chris has been doing this day in and out. Over the years, he seems to have mastered the art of masking his expressions and his thoughts. Yes, it comes with experience, and it looks like this dude here was also experienced. Definitely not the first time he was coming to meet a girl he met online, and definitely not the first time the girl was this young. The man was so seasoned in his act that even when Chris revealed his true identity, the man showed absolutely no reaction at all. He didn't give a single glance at the cameraman who had just walked into the room. You can give all the different kind of cold and deathly stares as possible, but none of it is going to keep you from going to jail, which is exactly what happened. But this next weirdo straight up declared that he was addicted to pot, but that wasn't his only dirty secret. When you find out what he does for a living, you'll be left in disbelief. So y'all just saw Nathan, a near psychotic guy who was willing to be an adult tutor for a young girl. But here comes Mike Manzi, a clown who loves to puff up some smoke and watch movies all day in his free time. But guess what else the sicko was into? Something that would send him straight to jail. It's not like he didn't know it would land him in trouble, but he did it anyway.
Well, you were cool and cute too. I just know I could get in trouble even talking to you, you know?
There was nothing stopping this loser, you see. He'd already made up his mind, and he knew exactly how to woo girls. Whether he had past experience of reaching out to girls online or not, Mike was used to being surrounded by a bunch of kids every other day. Wondering why? Because this filthy animal was a math tutor. When he arrived at the Sting house, Mike immediately sensed something off about the place. Or maybe that's how he always was, a sneaky little rat. Right off the bat, Mike walked right past the girl and put his detective cap on. Although the girl fit the description, the house somehow didn't. Not sure what Mike was expecting to find, but I'm sure he never expected to see a well-dressed gentleman who was waiting to grill him real good.
Hey, how are you? I'm good. Good.
Why don't you have a seat right on that stool, please?
Sure.
With no time to waste, Chris started his interrogation by asking him the mandatory question, "What are you doing here?" And of all the different lame excuses and reasons that you've heard on the show, you're not going to believe what this loser had to say. Apparently he was concerned. Concerned about what, you ask? You have to listen to this.
Concerned because she's talking to people that are a lot younger, a lot older on the website.
You heard that right. This loser was concerned about the girl talking to older men. Correction, other older men. Well, what a wonderful and dutiful citizen we have right here. This dude was actually here to do all sorts of things with the girl, and yet he had the audacity to say something as stupid as this. But here comes the crazy part. Not sure if it's funny or worrisome, because remember how this dude was actually a math tutor? His job required him to be around kids all day. And have you ever heard of private tutors? Damn, this guy had all the access he wanted, and I can't stop my imagination from going wild at this point. Sort of weird to even think that he would have anything to do with academics, let alone be a teacher. I mean, just look at him. Who in the world would have thought this joker would teach math?
She could be here with a group of people, for all I know. And she obviously was.
The actual nerve on this guy to talk as if Chris was the one who was committing an offense by interrupting his ever so casual meeting with the girl. Just look at those eyes. I mean, this guy is so deluded that he actually believed he was right. And when Chris asked him what he learned from his unexpected encounter, this jerk had a reply that would make you want to whack him in the face.
Today's lesson for me was to not, unfortunately, really worry about other people.
Well, hear me out, you psycho. The only thing you should be worried about right now is yourself. We don't need good Samaritans like you around who sneak in and try to be the guardian angel nobody asked for. Throughout the confrontation, Mike came across like a hot-headed slob who didn't give a damn about what Chris thought. He kept brushing aside everything, while also not giving away too much about himself. But when Chris started to read the chat logs, a whole new side to this sicko surfaced.
Wait,
Yes.
sir?
Yes.
Wait, are you answering me or are you reading stuff?
Yes. You can leave after I ask you a couple questions.
What did this prick think about himself? How dare he talk to Chris like that? This one had absolutely no sense of how to talk to someone as respected as Chris. Right from the way he interrupted him to how he spoke as if Chris was the one who was committing an offense. Everything about this dude seemed to be wrong. He was rude, he was cocky, he was obnoxious. This jerk deserved to be wiped away from the face of the earth. But things were about to get even more intense.
Please.
I'm Chris Hansen.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
Huh? Have you seen anything like this before? Chris was quite taken aback with the strange reaction. How many times would you come across someone who would react like that when you introduce yourself? And this guy wasn't saying it out of shock or disbelief. He meant it. It actually sounded like he was denying the TV presenter's identity to his face. Who does that? When he realized none of it was going his way, Mike decided to leave before it was too late, and that's what he did. Except this time, he was in handcuffs. The comment read saying, "Imagine turning on the TV to see your math tutor talking to Chris. Yep, nothing could be more embarrassing than this as a teacher." And what did the prick say? He was just trying to look out for the girl, protect her. To hell with protection. The only thing the girl had to be protected from was from the maniac himself and his freaking blazing. But if you thought this weirdo was intense, then wait till you see this next idiot who made quite the name for himself for being the most offensive weirdo to have ever been captured. But what Chris had in store for him was shocking.
Who are they? What's all that?
Just phony pictures.
Just phony pictures. Well, how come you cut the heads off?
I didn't. I just found them that way.
This is 21-year-old Jeff Stacy, and this guy is perhaps the most crassy man to have ever been featured on the show. Look how skeptical he already looks. He should have just taken a U-turn and gotten to his car and left from there, but maybe it's a little too late for that now, huh? Now, this dude may look like just another regular guy who was here, probably for the first time, just trying to get lucky and all that. But hey, don't go by his looks. Every minute of this confrontation is gonna keep you at the edge of your seat. Chris was about to confront a psycho. Yes, that's exactly what he was. A psycho who needed some major therapy, and you're about to find out why. When Chris stormed into the room and confronted him, Jeff at first came across as a guy who was stupefied. Despite Chris asking him several questions, the man just sat there at a loss for words. But don't get too carried away with that, for once he starts speaking, your impression about him is gonna take a 180-degree turn. When Chris started to cross-question him, Jeff started to open his foul mouth.
I don't remember.
You don't? Isn't that a little convenient? Then all of a sudden you're sitting here talking to me and you don't remember?
The tension within the Sting house is almost palpable at this moment. Chris was being very careful in handling this idiot. He slowly tried to get more from him, and bam! Loser boy Jeff started to give in. For every question that Chris fired at him, Jeff had only one answer to give: I don't remember. Well, you do remember the time and date and the address, so how is that you forgot everything else you needed to remember? Like how old the girl was, like her name, like the disgusting conversation you had earlier. Poof! Gone with the wind, huh? But if Jeff thought lying could help him get away, then there's no bigger fool than him in this world, for Chris was here to point out his every lie.
This is the first time I've ever met anybody offline.
Now, it seems like you're having some memory trouble tonight.
This jerk had actually driven all the way for almost an hour to reach here, and he expected Chris to believe they had forgotten everything? Better try harder, Jeff, for this is clearly not working in your favor. But when Chris started to read from the transcripts and mentioned a few disgusting things he'd asked the girl online, this weirdo had the craziest response.
What's wrong with what? Asking questions.
This must be the most outrageous thing you've ever heard. Yeah, so what's wrong in asking questions? They're just questions after all, right? And behind it that matters. But hey, the fact that he had just a conversation was enough to put him behind bars. But Jeff had no idea about it. He hadn't done his research well, so Chris decided to fill him in. When Chris asked him why he thought the girl was a cop, Jeff revealed something as crazy as himself.
Why did you ask if she was a cop?
Because I had people who were drunk friends, and they say that if you ask that they have to tell you.
Yeah, so this guy was told by his friends, who are actually a bunch of potheads that cops are bound to own up if someone asked them if they were one during a sting operation. What kind of BS is this? Have you ever heard something like this before? Well, looking at the source of information, the authenticity of what Jeff just said is already quite obvious. Now, who do you think you're trying to fool here, Jeff? There's just one fool in this room right now, and that's you. So cut it already. But Jeff persisted to be in denial.
What you're saying now conflicts with what you said online.
It's online, though.
So you just made it all up. All play, all chat.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, Chris was literally speechless because this conversation wasn't going anywhere at all, which means there was only one thing left to do: let the cops do their job and take over. Right from his iconic voice to his iconic quotes, Jeff became an overnight sensation. One of the viewers even likened him to Pinocchio. The only difference in this case being this loser's pitch went just as high as his lies went. Another fan wished for an animated series with Chris and Mickey Mouse. As for me, after listening to this idiot's husky voice, cartoons are the last thing that came to my mind. This one was straight up insane. No doubts there. Despite all the pun and digs, this dude was not funny in any way. However, this next weirdo took things to the next level, and when you find out what he offered to do with the girl, it's gonna leave you in shock.
It's so good to see you.
This is 26-year-old Joshua Colon. And if you missed something from the clip you just saw, let me take you back to it for a bit. Joshua did not just enter the sting house when the girl invited him over. If you noticed, he did bring a lot of stuff with him, including an overnight bag. But what he also did was to lock the door behind him as soon as he got in. What does this show? The man had something crazy on his mind that required the doors to remain shut. How crazy? You're about to find out.
Finish my dinner.
Oh, that's
I
okay.
was kind of in a rush.
You can finish. I had stuff earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're wondering what he brought along, then actually it wasn't anything much for the girl. You see, Joshua was in such a rush to get to the sting house that he actually didn't even stop by to have dinner. He brought it along with him. But before he sat down to devour his food, Joshua wanted to use the restroom. And once he got out, ta-da! Say hello to Chris, will ya? But looks like there are no introductions needed here, as Joshua already knew who Chris was.
Sure.
What show?
It's the show about men meeting young.
Men meeting young girls.
So, while this was happening inside the sting house, something totally else was happening outside. The sound you hear is actually this idiot's car alarm blaring out. Probably the cops were already searching his car, and that's what blew everyone's cover for the night. But Chris didn't want that interruption to steal his time away. This man had actually offered to even marry the girl, so there's no way he could be let off without a proper confrontation. He made sure to grill him left and right by saying this.
Guess I have no choice but to go to jail.
You deserve it.
Yeah.
And yes, that's exactly where you're headed towards and where you'll be for the next 7 years to come. So these were the weirdos Chris hated on the show. But who knows? There may be more weirdos out there who might show up with weirder things in the future.